Hello, folks. My name is Kevin Bryan. I'm the co founder of All Day TA. I'm going to give you a quick walk through our system just to show you how it works, give you a few pointers on what I think are the best ways to use the system. Once you've created a course, you'll arrive on this page where you're asked to upload your syllabus. So let me take a syllabus of mine. This is from a course on business strategy that was taught at the University of Toronto in 2024. So what's going on right now is the AI in the background is trying to figure out what the course is about, what the learning goals are, what we're trying to teach, and it's ripped out a bunch of metadata here. We've got the course name, the professors, the TAs, a description, and here you've got the URL that the students will eventually be able to see. If you happen to have a contract with us where we're behind your learning management system, they'll generally use a URL that is not public, so it will be behind the LMS. Otherwise, this will be how your students interact with the AI. I find this name a little long, so let's just change this to strategy tester. All right. So there you go. So now we're all set. We're saving. A few seconds later, we actually have the course live that quickly. And what you see here on our files page, of course, the only file is that syllabus I just added. Let me just switch to a course we've already set up that has a little more content. You can see here, I have a whole bunch of notes and lectures and transcripts and readings. How do I add those to the system? Well, it's simple. One, I can just drag and drop it right here. As many files as you want, no problem. Two, you can click select. It'll give you a pop-up on your computer where you can choose the files from a folder on your computer. Three, I can click create note where I can just type in some content. I often do this if I've emailed a student what I think is a really compelling response to the question. I'll just add it as a note so that the AI has it too. Or four, I can click import, which is going to ask for a code. This is a way to share files among different professors. All these files are data protected. So when you upload a document to All Day TA, we don't even save the original document. We take that document, rip out what we need for the AI to be able to work. We delete the underlying document, and we never share it with anyone else, nor do we train either our system or give your documents to a third party system that trains on what you've sent. So everything's totally siloed here. And what type of documents can you give? PDFs, PowerPoints, Word documents, web pages, recordings of your class, including in video. We'll be able to rip everything out. I should mention too, our transcription software is much better than anything you might have access to. And our ability to OCR or understand what's on a PDF is also a lot better than what you likely have access to. We've got some pretty nice tools there in the background. What happens with all these documents? What are they for? Well, let's take a look at the primary ways students will interact with the system. I'm going to click View Student All Day TA here. We give it a couple seconds to load, and now I can see what the students can see. So here's an interface that looks somewhat like, say, GPT or Claude, with the difference that the way this system is going to work is both more pedagogical in nature and much more constrained. It's not going to draw on any content that is not your documents. This doesn't mean that it can't think. It doesn't mean it can't produce vignettes or examples, but it does mean the language it uses and how it answers questions will match how you think. So let me give you an example. Tell me about SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. In my strategy courses, not everyone agrees, but in mine, I don't like teaching this. I don't think it's a good way to try to understand how strategic decisions are made. So you'll see here, SWOT is a model that attempts to answer whether a strategy will work, but this class emphasizes on how it shows a more rigorous basis in economic theory. We argue in our documents that this is the listing strengths and weaknesses is actually not a very good thing for a strategic manager to do. And you can see it's drawing on certain notes that I developed during my class. This is very different from what would happen, for example, if you went to GPT, Google, or Claude and asked what's SWOT. It's just going to define it. So these systems don't know what you're trying to teach. We know exactly what you're trying to teach and the language you use. Okay, let's come back to our files page. Let me show you a few other things you can do here. Current homework. If you have homework you don't want students to cheat on, you're probably all aware students are using LLMs to cheat on a lot of take-home assignments. We can stop this almost all of the time within our system by just adding in your current homework into this text box. When you've added it in, for instance, define residual control rights, is a relational contract more likely to be used than a formal contract? I even added an answer here that you don't have to do that. Our system is clever enough that even if the students ask something that's not exactly this, we're going to stop it. So, for example, here, what is a RCR? Give me a definition. So I didn't say residual control rights. The student might think they're sneaking one past us here, but don't worry. We've got some AI in the background that's going to gently guide the student away from a more direct response. Weekly summaries. You can see here there have only been 8 questions asked because it's just questions I asked for this demo. The course isn't going on right now. But if we drop back to the fall when we are teaching, what you're going to see is here's a ton of questions that were asked on a particular week by our students. The AI is going to summarize the nature of those questions, where people have had some problems, and you also can, of course, see every question that the students asked. In fact, you can even see where they're not happy. In this case, the students wanted us to summarize a case we were using for our final exam, and the AI wouldn't answer it. You can download all these, see everything, and if you don't like a particular answer, you can also add a note here to try to correct that, and the AI will then use that information as well. How do things show up here? Let's go back to the student-facing site. You don't have to ask in English. If you have students, say, second language speakers, they might say something like, transaction costs, apologies for the terrible French. Le coût de transaction, I don't know exactly what that would be in French, but I'm going to ask it. It's going to answer the theory of transaction costs. I got it right. From Coase stipulates that transaction costs. We're just going to explain how transaction costs work. Again, we're going to draw on my own notes, in this case, some slides I created, but the student gets the response in the language they prefer. If I then come to our weekly summaries, I'm going to come up to this week. You'll see now we have 9 questions instead of 8. I come down here. Here's the answer. And if you're a little bit curious, what are these students doing to ask in their language? Don't worry. We actually have an auto translator built in that's going to give you the English response so you can read that as well. All right, let's continue to settings. A few of the most important ones. Here I've set the answer style to very direct for the demo so that the answers are short. I generally prefer balanced. This is a somewhat more Socratic style of responding to students. It doesn't just give them direct answers, but it tries to get them to think through some of the conceptual ideas you presented. If you want a very Socratic system that asks follow-up questions and tries to elicit the answer from the students, you can choose more instructive. And we've given you a few examples of how that's going to work here. Also, under this setting, you can choose to disable access to your system either at the end of the course or, more importantly, during your exams. Highly recommend doing that. If we pop over here to Professor's TAs, you can add whatever TAs you want here. I've got a few of my colleagues added to this system. If they're not already in the system, of course, it'll just send them an email and invite them to join so that your TA can then assist you with this course. On students, my particular class, I like leaving open to the public. The reason is the public can't find this URL anyway. It is the least interfering way for students to use All Day TA, and it lets them feel like everything's anonymous. So we found the type of questions students ask when they feel the system is anonymous look fairly unusual. It kind of gives them a little bit of psychological safety when they're interacting with the system. If you do not want your class to be open on the internet and you're not at a university where we've done an integration with your learning management system, what you can do is click require student emails, and then you're going to need to add the email addresses of your students. So it's pretty easy. It's just a comma delimited list. Once you've added them, it'll email the students inviting them. And when they come to the website, they just need to type in their email and then they can use the system. Some professors prefer to do things that way. If we haven't integrated with your university's LMS, you won't see anything here. Of course, with any questions, you can feel free to email us through our support at any time. We'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. The one thing I would say, just to finish off, is what should you put in this system? The important thing about All Day TA is we're trying to create guardrails around how students learn. So we don't want them just using Google or just using a public LLM. That's not what we're trying to teach in our class. So when I think, what should I add? I think anything I would give a human TA who would read whatever I gave them. So all my class lectures, recordings of those, all my slides, any documents I use to prepare the class, any great emails I sent to students, just throw those in. And once you've thrown them in, because our system tries to cite the underlying document, I would change the name to something that's interpretable for the student. For instance, this class 11 transcript, I might, transcript of lecture. I want to name it in a way that's the easiest for my students to understand as possible so that when they see a citation to it, they understand where things are coming from. Let's save that change. I think that's all you need to get started. I honestly think you can set up your entire class in under a half an hour, and I'm really excited to see how your students use it. Generally, I've found if you introduce this to the students and tell them it's out there, you barely need to do anything else. The students will absolutely figure out how to use it, and they'll use it heavily. The only disappointing thing sometimes is you find out how heavily they use it before your exams rather than throughout the semester. But don't worry, at All Day TA, we have some ideas coming down the pike for you later this term on how to solve that as well.